Ladies and gentlemen, Kamala Harris and Democrats are becoming more unhinged and more desperate for political power. And since this redistricting battle began and Democrats started to lose, we've seen them show us just how little they care about what actually makes America the country that it is. So much so now that they're coming out and announcing what they plan to do if they get back power. Which is what this is all about, Democrat thirst for power, but more importantly, their willingness to trample over the very fabric of this country to regain said power and never lose it again. As always, if you enjoy the content, smash that thumbs up button. That's the best way to let me know to stay locked in with the future videos. Subscribe to the channel. First, let's start with Kamala Harris addressing Democrats in what she calls a no bad ideas brainstorm, which basically featured nothing but really bad ideas from Kamala Harris herself that the left has been talking about for quite some time now. Take a listen.
Here's what I would like to also invite. In addition to everything that we know we're going to do in terms of what we have to do to activate, to march, to protest, to speak up, I think that we need an expanded playbook, okay? And I think there's going to be some risk that we're going to have to assume along with that, but we need to be prepared to be able to handle that. I think that we need an expanded playbook in a way that we invite all ideas, that we have basically, that we say, look, this is a moment where there are no bad ideas. A no bad idea brainstorm is what I'd like to call it. And in that no bad ideas brainstorm, we talk about what we need to do and think about doing around the Electoral College. We talk about the idea of Supreme Court reform, which includes expanding the Supreme Court. We invite a conversation about multi-members districts. We talk about, that if we win the Senate, which we should and we will, then the Senate Judiciary Committee should have rules that they put in place so when these people come before as nominees to the Supreme Court and lie, that they are held to account and consequence. Not just that somebody goes on cable news and says they lied, but that there are rules in place to actually penalize people for lying to a Senate Judiciary Committee. That we agree that it is right to have ethics rules for Supreme Court justices. And let's put those in place. Let's talk about statehood for Puerto Rico and D.C. These are the things I think that we've got to do. We've got to neutralize these red states from cheating, including blue states expanding their maps. And all of this, I think, is look, we got to fight fire with fire. These folks are playing to win. We got to play to win too. And they're ruthless. And look, we are never going to violate the law or do anything unethical or immoral, but we need to be ruthless too. And that means knowing the tools that are at our disposal or are within our reach. And yes, there may be risk associated with reaching for them. But look, this is what a fight looks like. And the stakes are too high. And when I look at like those young leaders in North Carolina A&T, I look at the Gen Zers and the millennials who are on this call. This is a fight worth having. When you know what you stand for, you know what to fight for.
Can you imagine if she became president? And so basically, because the left is losing and losing badly, they're like, well, let's change the rules so we can win again, of course. Even if it means trampling over what the founding fathers envisioned and the very reason they did very specific things. And so she wants to make Puerto Rico a state. Why? Because, well, it's more liberal and would be a sure win. But even worse, she wants to make Washington, D.C. a state, which, when it comes to bad ideas, this one has to take the cake. The reason the founding fathers did not make Washington, D.C. a state, and clearly either Kamala is clueless, which it's a high probability she is, just oblivious to this knowledge and or just doesn't care, who knows, was because they believed the national capital needed to be independent from any one state's political control. If the federal government sat inside a regular state, the state could pressure, threaten, influence the national government. That's not a good thing, ladies and gentlemen. talking about the president, Congress, the Supreme Court, federal buildings, national records would be sitting inside one state's territory. Actually, after the Revolutionary War, unpaid soldiers surrounded Congress in Philadelphia. Congress needed protecting, and Pennsylvania did not handle it properly. That moment taught them a very valuable lesson. The founders saw that and saw how dangerous that could be, no matter what side of the political aisle you stand on. That's just a bad idea. But according to Kamala Harris, there are no bad ideas, just how the left can gain back power. And so, of course, now they want to say that Republicans are cheating because they are losing. And Republicans are actually fighting back, not allowing them to just, have safe Democrat seats. So let's go to Ron DeSantis, because he calls out Kamala Harris on a few things she said here. Take a listen.
I'm seeing different things out there about people like Kamala Harris saying they want to pack the Supreme Court, eliminate the Electoral College, do all these other things. And I think those are really bad ideas. I think our founding fathers would have thought they were bad ideas. Although I think it's interesting, if you want to expand the Supreme Court, why don't you do it right now? Oh, you don't want to do it right now. You want to do it maybe okay, I get it. So it's not that you think the court should just be bigger. You want to try to do, but I think what's happened is they've suffered a series of losses over many cycles, none more dramatic than in Florida over the last 7 years, that's for sure. And I think they're acting out doing some of these things. And our founding fathers believed in having an amendment process. They didn't think everything that they did was perfect. They understood that constitutions sometimes needed to be amended, and sometimes these things needed to have alterations. But there's a reason to do that. And when you're doing it, you want to reinforce the founding principles, not try to deviate from the founding principles. And that's what Kamala is trying to do.
Democrats are laying all their cards out on the table and making it very clear what it will look like if they regain power. And we already know what that could look like with what we experienced just a few years ago. And now they're telling us basically it's going to be more extreme than that, ladies and gentlemen. Even when we talk about the filibuster, the left has been very clear on what they will do if they gain the majority again. They will get rid of the filibuster so they can attempt to push through all of their radical policies and make it so they never lose power again. Take a listen.
For years, since I got into Congress, I have been saying that we need to pass what we passed in the House, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. We needed to get big money out of politics. We needed to reform the Supreme Court so it actually represents the people of the United States. Now, all of these things are blocked by the Jim Crow legacy filibuster in the Senate that refuses to allow the majority of the will of the people to come through in any of these things. And so the Supreme Court has been the highest court in the land, the only court with no ethics, no transparency at all. And they have continually been doing whatever they can to turn back the clock. And so if we don't understand the consequences of that, and to our previous conversation, if we keep going back to say, well, we keep the filibuster in place because it allows us to be, thoughtful in our deliberations in the Senate, we are missing the fact that 40 mostly white men who represent 12% of the country's population in the United States Senate can block us from actually reinstituting voting rights, reforming the Supreme Court, and doing all of the things that are required for us to uphold our democracy.
This is how far the left is willing to go, ladies and gentlemen. And in the meantime, what we continue to see are Democrats reading the same script with this redistricting going on since the Supreme Court ruling, where Democrats are now suddenly Democrats are overwhelmingly concerned about black voters and representation and black people's rights suddenly. And so the race hustling is continuing from the left. This time, now you got Gavin Newsom, who, like Kamala Harris, is most likely going to run for president. And so listen to the script that Democrats continue to use around this subject. Take a listen.
This is just Jim Crow 2.0. It's sick. Stone cold racism in a scale I never thought I'd see in my lifetime. Never have seen in my lifetime. It's all happening. Bring us back to a pre-1960s world. It's jaw-dropping what's happening. It was jaw-dropping what Governor Landry did. He suspended a primary election where tens of thousands of people had already voted. Why? To redistrict 2 districts to eliminate black representation. I can't believe that we're experiencing this. My parents talked to me about this. I said, well, thank God it's not going to happen on my lifetime. And it's happening in real time. Anti-woke is anti-black. All these attacks on DEI, it's anti-black. Level of racism is sick. Rewriting history, censoring historical fact. Number of African Americans have been eliminated from key positions and posts. The Pentagon and elsewhere, it's sick. It's happening in the United States of America in the open. And it needs to be called out. So forgive me for reacting this way. And I feel a deep responsibility to do something about this, and nothing to do with me as governor, just as a human being. This is not why our founding fathers lived and died. It was about the expansion of liberty, expansion of freedom, including more and more people. And we're seeing exactly the opposite take shape under this administration.
What's sick is how Democrats seem to always find themselves using the black community as their political tools to push their agenda. What's anti-black is how Democrats were fine with opening the border, flooding illegals into this country where they were going to communities where black people mostly live in these blue cities, yes, with gang members, criminals, and violent individuals coming on in. Taking resources from these communities that are already struggling due to poor leadership and giving them to individuals who are here illegally in these sanctuary cities. Gavin Newsom knows this is not about Republicans being anti-black. This is about Democrat power, ladies and gentlemen. How could it be about being anti-black when in Virginia, they could have voted for a black woman to become the next governor? But because she was Republican, what happened? You had Obama, who, according to the left, is the leader of the black community, which is why he tried to shame black men for not voting for Kamala during the national election, but then told them they need to go out and vote for Abigail Spanberger, a white Democrat. And so Republicans aren't targeting black people. They're targeting overwhelmingly Democrat districts that have become safe seats for the left. And they don't have to compete as a result. And they don't have to actually do anything for the people they are supposed to serve because they know it's a lock. But that doesn't stop Democrats like Representative Ayanna Pressley from saying things like this. Take a listen.
This is a unique burden for Black America, who for decades, even after the Voting Rights Act was passed, even after the Civil Rights Act was passed, have been outworking and outvoting voter suppression. But it is very clear that this administration is working actively to take us back, not even just to Jim Crow, I would say even pre-Reconstruction, to take us all the way back, seeking to silence and disenfranchise the voices and the votes, and to try to dilute the power and the black representation of Black America. So he has been attacking black people, black bodies, black votes, black power, black progress.
The left wants everyone to believe that the president is taking us back to slavery, is what she's saying. Which, when you really think about that and what that actually means, if Democrats thought their base was any kind of smart, just a little smart, and not overly emotionally driven, they would never say that, because that is literally only used to create a specific reaction from black voters, from liberals, from people with Trump derangement syndrome who can't think logically about what that time actually looked like. Not just the segregation, but the totality of the black experience then versus now, which, newsflash, it's not comparable in any way, shape, or form.
Back then, Republicans actually had a majority in the state Senate. What happened was that districts in the state Senate in New York State were gerrymandered and diluted so much where they tried to pack as many independents and Democrats and try to get as many moderate Republicans to represent them. Well, guess what happened? In 2018, once voters, became accustomed to Donald Trump's authoritarian ways, the Democrats seized a supermajority that has only grown in the New York State Senate. The national parallel here is that Republicans, the bullies who started this redistricting mess against the will of the voters, they actually diluted so many districts in Texas and Florida. By the way, if you see a blue wave this November, like we saw in November 2018, Republicans might actually hurt themselves and might actually be overstretched and lose some of these seats, because clearly Donald Trump's polling numbers keep getting worse by them.
I see Joe itching to get in here.
I'll just say this. There's a few problems there. Number one, it was a Democrat and Andrew Cuomo working together with a Senate majority that was in name only Republican, in part because of an IDC that caucused with Republicans, that led to us having an independent commission that then Democrats basically blew up because it was for political power. So that's
Andrew
just
Cuomo was a Democrat in name only.
The reality is, it wasn't Republicans that voted to basically submarine the independent commission. It was the Democrats. And to be clear, no one should have done it. Gerrymandering, as I've said, is bad. But here's the reality. You keep making bad arguments. You can't say that we're trying to drag America back to the Jim Crow South when Chuck Schumer and Elizabeth Warren are getting ready to spend millions of dollars to put a Nazi in the United States Senate from Maine. You can't say that voter ID is bad and that black people are too poor and too stupid to get an ID when Georgia passes voter ID and then we have a record number of black people vote.
And so I'm going to leave it here, ladies and gentlemen. Democrats are telling you exactly what they plan to do if they get back control. Change the rules, endanger our federal government by making D.C. a state, kill the filibuster, pack the system, cry racism when Republicans fight back, and then pretend they're defending democracy while trying to rig the structure so they never lose again. And the crazy part about all of this is they do it all while acting like they are the guardians of the Constitution. These are the same people who will lecture the country about democracy, fairness, and representation. But the moment the system does not benefit them, suddenly everything needs to be rewritten. But those are my thoughts in the update. Now I want to hear from you. Drop your comments down below. I appreciate when you guys chime in. Smash that thumbs up. If you do enjoy the content, subscribe for more. And as always, until next time.